Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This morning, I will be talking about tokenism. What does that mean? Imagine there's a country, just one group of people, one race, two political parties, Party A and Party B. Most of the people who belong to Party A votes the same way 95% of the time. The other party that belongs to Party B votes that way 5% of the time. Let's say that. The other time they feel like they're disenfranchised because Party A is always getting 95% of the votes. However, Party A continues to say the system is rigged against them. There's no opportunities to move forward. There's no opportunities for growth. They have suffered from outside oppression. The system is rigged against them in so many ways. In Party A, family is disoriented. Children are being born without fathers in the homes. The education is substandard. The only people that seem to make it in Party A are entertainers and athletes. If anyone who supports Party A decide that they want to become educated and pursue the views of Party B, they're quickly branded as tokens, outcasts, sometimes called derogatory names as Oreos, bootlickers, whatever derogatory terms that you can. Now, say that same Party A, has been in power for 40 plus years. They say they're about morality, upholding the family, and diversity. Does that sound familiar? Well, last week they had a travesty of a hearing of a convicted criminal in trying to gather evidence that our current president colluded with the Russians to win the presidential election. At some point, a black conservative or someone, we're not even sure if she is a conservative, let's say that, name was brought up. It was said that she's a part of the current administration, the Trump's administration. And during our conversation between two representatives, the conservative who brought this person to the table was accused of tokenism. It was taken further by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And, she's really popularized the term tokenism. And that has a number of implications. Now, historically, the Republican Party was for blacks. The history is there. That is from slavery, ending slavery, the Republican Party being formed to end slavery. The Republican Party was the party that gave us the 13, 14, and 15 amendments. The Republican Party is the party that supported women's rights. The Republican Party was a party that voted for the Civil Rights Act and also the Voting Rights Act. A number of different things historically, but in the 30s, blacks started supporting the Democratic Party in large numbers. I think it's about 70%, 71%. Since the 1960s, just about from 88 to 94% of blacks have voted Democratic. The Republican Party, in terms of representation, is down from when when a Republican president gets 10% of the vote of the black vote, then that Republican is basically maxing out what he can accomplish in terms of black votes. Now I'm going somewhere with this. What does this mean? I've heard this so many times, and I keep saying it. It has been said that the Republican Party cares nothing or does not care enough about the plight of the black man, that institutional or systemic racism exists in large proportion, and it continues to disenfranchise blacks. Is there some truth to this? What I continue to hear, and what I continue to see, and what I continue to hope for, is that there has been a history. There has been a history of oppression. But it's that history, if you were to really square the blame, squares up with mostly the Democratic Party in terms of laws. Those laws were ended in the 60s. Now they've had the Great Society movement with Lyndon Baines Johnson to help oppressed blacks move forward. They've had affirmative actions. They have had quotas. Have these programs worked? There are blacks who will swear that these programs have been beneficial to the black community, but to what degree? Who are mainly the beneficiaries? From my understanding and looking at this, most of the people that tend to benefit from these programs tend to be in the law profession. Does it really help the common man? Does it help the guy who goes out there day in, day out and work hard? I.e., say, having a minimum wage, does that help blacks? No, it really doesn't help blacks, because when you increase minimum wage, if you're a low-skilled employee and a company is struggling, more likely than often, the low-skilled employee will be relegated or let go first. So I hear it all the time that you don't understand the plights of Black Americans. True, I don't. I can only read the history. I can only look at what I have seen since I've been in this country 20 plus years. There's so much that you continue to hear this narrative. Tim Scott, for example, was called a token or a prop. And so many others have been labeled props and token. Because as Black conservatives, as Black conservatives, we are supposed to not support the Republican Party. Or the only way that you can become a force in the Republican Party is, one, if you have an agenda. Not because you believe in individual freedom, not because you believe in religious freedom, not because you believe that abortion is wrong, not because you believe that social engineering is wrong, not because any of those things. There's no way to reconcile being a Black conservative with those values. And I know there are a lot of Democrats, Black Democrats, who hold those views. Hold on just a second. This light is kind of killing me right here. Blacks, it is said, about 40% of us actually hold conservative values very close to white Republicans. And the only separation is based on color. This light is still killing me. I'm sorry about that. Sunlight is coming over and it's causing an issue. We are to believe that the only way for someone to be considered a black conservative is because he's a sellout, because he sold out the black community, black people, or values that are supposed to help the black community. Should we continue to listen to the vitriol that every time someone black stand up and says I'm a conservative, that he should be denigrated, be laughed at, be called an outcast, be called a token, be called Oreo? Should we be supporting those kind of rhetoric? I was a Democrat. I'm an immigrant to this country. I supported a lot of Democratic Party values, but it just could not square with my conservative principles. I could not support the victimization mentality. I could not support the continuous attack on the institution of the church, the institution of marriage. Could not support those things anymore. I could not support the insinuation that life does not start at conception. Those things that I just mentioned, there are a lot of blacks who believe the same way. So why is it that when someone black decides to leave the Democratic Party, they are being branded tokens? Or you're being told you're looking for an opportunity to profit? And I'm sure there are people who probably look for opportunity to profit, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. I'm pretty sure they are. But why is it that blacks cannot be sincere that, you know what, the Democratic Party just does not square with my values anymore? Likewise, there are Democrats who are probably Republicans who wants to support abortion, who wants to support values that they find that the Democratic Party supports. I don't hear the argument the other way around, that when Republicans leave the Republican Party because they don't support the values of the church, the values of marriage. You don't hear Republicans branding them names or calling them out. But when a black man decides that he believes in individuality, he believes in hard work, responsibility, and he doesn't believe affirmative action help the black community as is being talked about, or the Great Society or the Great Movement by Lyndon Johnson has benefited the black community in the way that it was supposed to, then he or she or they are looked upon or is not taken seriously. I know many of blacks who love and care for this country. They support the flag, they support the military, they support free market, they support a lot of those things. But they support the Democratic Party. How do they square those values with the Democratic Party, who pushes socialistic principles, multiculturalism, anti-God agendas, anti-American agendas? How do they square those values? These are just genuine questions that I have. How is it that you can stay in that party supporting those values? Now, they say there's always this code word by conservative and Republicans, and they use terms or they push policies like the electoral college or voter ID. Are there certain words that they will use to justify, or those are code word to support white nationalism or white supremacy or all those things? Those are words. Say, for instance, the electoral college. The Democrats are pushing the narrative now that says abolish, and there are states that are pushing the narrative we need to get rid of the electoral college. I want to caution blacks to realize this. President Abraham Lincoln was elected by the electoral college. He did not win the popular vote. President Abraham Lincoln is the man who led the Union Army to end the institution of slavery. Should we go back then and says you didn't win the popular vote, you can't be president? What would that mean for America today? Where would we be today? The system has proven itself over and over, again and again. The way to keep tyranny from taking control is the system of government that we have. Republican system of government, checks and balances, where Congress is supposed to do their job, where the Supreme Court is supposed to interpret the laws as written by the Constitution, where the president elected by the people is supposed to work with Congress to make sure that all Americans benefit. How do you get to say voting IDs or electoral college, popular vote, is now code for white supremacists? How do we get to the point to say someone who cares about their country as a president? And I know many blacks who are proud to wear their American flags or their American uniform or outfit. Come 4th of July, you see that patriotism. I don't just see white people out there celebrate. See blacks. How do we square the narrative with to say to them, because you love the country, or because a white man who happens to be the president says he supports a national movement to go back to the founding principle, now those very principles are being looked upon as pushing white supremacist movement or white supremacy. What unifies America? Is it multiculturalism? Is it tribalism? Do we not assimilate anymore as immigrants come into this country? Do we not try to aspire to speak the language? Do we not hold the values of the flags or the US Constitution in high value? I've said this before, as a black man coming to this country and as an immigrant with an accent, it's there's if I was to use color as the identifying, the unifying um, glue to what I hold as value in America, I would be as lost as a goose. The US Constitution or the Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal with unalienable rights endowed by God. I have been embraced as an American. One, because I believe assimilation works. Why why are blacks afraid of assimilating with American values? And I have to be very careful saying assimilating. I mean, assimilating, unifying around the flag, unifying around the Constitution, unifying around the Electoral College. Why is it that blacks and whites cannot unify around those principles? Individuality, the free market. Why is it that we are not being unified around those? Those are American values. Should we continue to say racial prejudice don't exist? I'd be a fool to say it doesn't exist. But colorism, meaning those who support white supremacist movement, they're on the fringes. There's no place in America for them, and I can say that confidently. But who checks that very colorism in the black community that also says the black man is superior than any other race? The white man is not superior than any other race. Neither is the black man. What separates us are good and bad. That's what separates people. Color is immutable. We are who we are. I would never want to be a white man. I would never want to be a white man. I am happy with who God made me to be. Who I am, what I look like is immutable as endowed by the Creator. This is part of my unalienable rights. I'm a black man, but I identify with individuality. I identify with free market. I identify with assimilation. I identify that Jim Crow was evil. Slavery was evil. I can say those things were evil. We say systemic. You don't understand, brother, man. You're not from here. Systemic oppression, systemic racism, systemic this. You don't understand that. But I will say this. I came here as an immigrant. I didn't have any programs to benefit me. I had to learn the system. And what I saw that would help me move forward was assimilate into this culture. They had laws in place. Abide by those laws, abide by those principles. There were things that I already knew to do in order to succeed, and that was to work hard. Asian Americans are considered one of the most successful groups in this country. Their focus mainly on education. Their income is almost $20,000 higher than whites. And then within that group, take Indian Americans, their income is almost $40,000 higher than whites. Asian Americans actually are more favorable in terms of to lending institution. They prefer to lend Asian American over whites. Why I'm bringing that up? If this country is so systemic in and steep in racial prejudice, how is it that people who, especially they're not from, say, from English background, they don't look white, they don't look black, can be atop of the economic chain across all sectors that they enter? They don't have the amount of representation that blacks have in politics, or whites. How is it that a group who is underrepresented, which is only about 5 or 6% of the population, can be so successful economically? How is it that this systemic racism or oppression doesn't doesn't stop them or doesn't stunt their growth. And people will say, oh, these immigrants come here and they're wealthy. That's not always true. That doesn't explain the level of economic success that they have. So how is it that they can come and they can move to the top of the ladder? How is that possible? We've been told that the banking system, and we can go back in the day with the New Deal. Yes, there were a lot of unfavorable movements towards blacks. Banking, housing, we know those things existed. But today they say the lending institutions are biased against blacks. But what people are not telling you, black-owned lending institution deny blacks and actually will grant loans to whites more than blacks. Why is this? Is that systemic racism, or is it that whites are more likely not to default on their loans? Why would black institution or black banks do that? Because in the free market, people are about responsibility. Those who can pay. Those narratives suit people who continue to push this idea that this is an oppressive place to live. There's evil in this world. There's evil in this country. But we cannot continue to try to brand this country as a racial paradise where racism or bigotry is the norm of the land. That is not true. Far from being it. This is a great country. There are a lot of flaws, and a lot of the flaws that I see is coming from Congress, Republicans and Democrats, not the people. Congress, they have punted their jobs to the Supreme Court. And then when a president comes in and circumvent Congress, they are being told that this is unconstitutional. This is unconstitutional. Congress is supposed to pass laws, not the Supreme Court. Not the Supreme Court. Now, back to this whole idea that we are in such a racially prejudiced, systematic, oppressive, bigoted culture and country. How is that so? What am I missing? No, you just don't understand, brother, man. You just don't understand. You just don't get it. You just don't understand the history. But statistics, whether it's by the Brookings Institute or the Cato Institute or whatever, says this. And I've said it before in other broadcasts. Finish high school, get married before having children. Hold a job, get a job, hold a job. Those things are a sure way to get you out of economic oppression. Those are sure ways to encourage family stability. Those are sure ways to build unity. You cannot have a government that exists without unity within the family. We have to unite around something. And like I said, there's at least 40% of blacks who believe in individuality, responsibility, free market, the American national identity. About 40%. The church, that the church should be protected. So to those people like Ocasio-Cortez or Talib or whatever, I can never pronounce her name and I don't want to do her name a disservice. Other blacks who are to the left continue to say a Tim Scott, or Miss Patton is a prop. Need to really take a step back and realize within the Democratic Party, there are many blacks who espouses conservative principles. What should the Republican Party, what should they do to attract these people? What should they do to gain the confidence of these blacks who see the destruction within the Democratic Party and says, you know what? This is not my values. This is not what I believe. This is not what my pastor is preaching from the pulpit on Sundays. How do you get them? I heard a brilliant speech this week by Michelle Malkin. I loved it. You know, what is it about this country that will unite us? Do we continue to go to the boardroom or to our yachts, or where do we go? Do we continue to just, like myself here, just stay here behind a camera and spew off at the mouth, or write a book and says, this is how we'll get to the black Democrats who, will support the Republican Party? Do we do that? Or do we get in the trenches? And do we fight for what is right? There's no shame as a black man, as a black American, to be a Republican. It is part of the American foundation. There's no shame. There's no stigma. Even within the Democratic Party, I'm just asking, and I keep asking, what align the 36 or 40% of blacks who see things a lot of ways that I do? Meaning, and I'll keep saying it, individual freedom, free market, protection of Christian values, protection of the unborn, gun rights. It's not just 8% of the black community that believe in those values. It's not just 8% of the black community that believes that education is the way forward. It's not just 8%. There are many in the black community. But how do you square that with Democratic Party values, which says socialism, 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 fascism, ism, schism, ism, schism, ism, 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 ism. Every kind of ism, racism, sexism, feminism. How do those values square with the black community, our black American? How does that square? You don't have to make anything. You already know what it means to be an American. Yes, in the Republican Party, yes, you have to realize that. But as a former athlete, I don't believe in affirmative action. For one, some of the richest blacks in this country are the best athletes in the world, not just in this country. They've spent time, they've spent effort, and they've honed their skills, and they've become good at what they do. So if there's an affirmative action quota, what would happen to those really good black athletes? Should we have a quota in the music industry or the entertainment industry? Yeah, well, some people keep saying they need to be quota in the entertainment, or for Oscars and those things. I really frankly don't care. If you're good at what you're doing and you're prospering at it, why getting an award? Why should getting an award should matter? What I'm saying is this: if you are saying affirmative action is necessary, then it should work in all fields. So when there's 70+% representation in the NFL or the NBA, then those people should be, then the people who are substandard should be given an opportunity to compete in those leagues. Or say, for instance, the Olympics. They should have a few white representatives just because they're white in the 100 meters or the 200 meters. Is that where we're supposed to be? Is that what we're encouraging? We have to really look at where we're going with these messages. That's one of the reasons why I don't support affirmative action. It doesn't encourage the best out of us. And I understand why it was put in place. But how good has it been for the Black community? Everything that has been created, whether it was for the 14th Amendment, whether it was for the Civil Rights Movement, has been hijacked by hyper feminists, far left liberals, and has been taken over. And it has not served the purpose for what they were intended. I'm against those things. I'm against affirmative action for those very principles. Those very principles I just talked about. What do we do then? People will ask. How do we get in the door? How do we get to the top? I have to caution us to say Blacks are 14% of this population. We dominate entertainment. We dominate athletics. No shame in doing those things. These are good things to do. It's productive. But how far do we focus? Where do we try? Do we try to get representation in every avenue? Politically, our Black politicians, for the most part, have been complete failure, utter failure. Representation has not brought success. It has relegated, isolated Blacks more than anything else. So does Black representation, has it helped Blacks to become better? Blacks continue to move forward even with substandard representative or representative who really doesn't care about their interests. How many Blacks can say it was because of this representative why we're successful? Why almost 13% of the Black community is doing well? How many Blacks can say that? How many Blacks can say because we had a Black president in office for 8 years, our lives have been better? How many can honestly say that economically, spiritually? Not economically or not spiritually. And we had a Black president. So does Black representation in politics mean success? Not necessarily. It makes for a good argument. But there are many people who will never enter politics and they will be trailblazers. They will inspire. Like many of the athletes. They're inspiration. And yes, they're inspiration. There might be people who are saying, what do you mean? They have a story to tell. They've had to overcome a lot. I've said this in my book, Outcast, that you can find on Amazon.com. When a Black man becomes educated and assimilate to this culture, they said he's speaking white, not speaking American. They're speaking white. What does that mean, speak white? I understand what they mean, but Ben Carson, a neurosurgeon, he's called an idiot because he's a Republican. He supports individualism. He supports he doesn't support abortion. He supports the institution of marriage. He's a Black man. He's a neurosurgeon, one of the best, one of the first. A great story. You have a Condoleezza Rice, been elevated to one of the highest level Secretary of State. Not just in this country, but was one of the most visible Black persons in the world. They're looked down upon. Talk show hosts like a Larry Elder. They're branded. Jesse Lee Peterson. There are people out there with stories to tell. A Thomas Sowell, a Walter Williams. But what happens when someone decides that they have been educated enough to understand that the policies being pushed by the Democratic Party or the liberal blacks or the liberal whites is detrimental to the black community, and they speak out against about it? Or they say, you know what? They don't even speak out. They said, you know what? I'm a Republican because the Democratic Party values do not square with what I believe. Then you're all of a sudden, you're an outcast. You're a token, you're a prop, or like a Candace Owens, who's become a powerful voice in the black community. What do you say about these people? Do you continue to allow blacks to denigrate them when you have your children, you want your children in the best schools, you want them to be intellectually gifted, you want them to be athletically gifted, you want your sons to be preachers, eloquent, preaching the word, not preaching liberal doctrine, but the word. Those are conservative values. Those are the founding principles that I, as an immigrant, has come to love and recognize of what makes America great. Not the white man or the white woman pushing this multiculturalism, tribalistic, or this socialistic message. Most blacks will tell you that if you continue to give, even the ones who are getting it will say the reason why they're not doing it is because it's beneficial. They see that. It doesn't challenge them to go out there and do something. I'm not saying pull the rug out from everybody. There are people who genuinely need assistance, and this country is set up to do that. This country is set up to help people who are struggling. But it is not set up. We cannot continue to just allow people to just continue to languish in victimization. We as a culture should support the best. We like the best athletes. We like the best intellect. So if the best intellect happen to be conservative or Republican, why are they being branded tokens? Why are they being told they're being put as props? One of the tough positions for a black man or a black conservative is to be told that you're being props. Props for what? Putting you in a position of power. Why? What benefits would it have to the white community to put a black man in a position of power, knowing full well most blacks will never support the Republican Party? What benefit? How is that benefiting them? I find that very difficult to square. I find it very hard to understand why would and there are people who say there are people with agendas. I was sincere when I was supporting the Democratic Party. It was just, but then there's something within me that just didn't square with their platform, with their policies, to where you're now being told as an immigrant you don't have to assimilate. And then you wonder why there are immigrants who are coming to this country, and we have representatives that push anti-American rhetoric or anti-Jewish rhetoric. Oh, the Jews control everything. The Jews do this, or the white man, the white man is dangerous. We cannot support those things. We should not support those things. If a black man commits a crime, it's not because he's black, because that he commits a crime. Same way, if a white man is racially prejudiced, it's not because he's white why he's doing that, because there's something wrong within him. His heart isn't right. So when we try to assign evil to color or ethnicity, it's a dangerous pathway to go. Now, there are religious beliefs and ideologies and political philosophies that are dangerous to our democracy, or do not square with Republican government. They exist, but evil respects no color. Just like death respects no one. Doesn't doesn't say because you're white you're going to live longer, and because you're black or because you're Asian you're going to live longer. It doesn't say any of those things. It doesn't respect. This is just a logical. There's a logical sequence to life. Do we give white supremacy a platform? No, we shouldn't. Should we give black supremacy a platform? No, we shouldn't. Should we give sexism or feminism a platform? A multiculturalism a platform? No. A multiculturalism will destroy American foundation. I've been told racism, sexism, glass ceiling. What are those things? What do they look like? There are many multiple factors that goes into making determination sometimes we don't see. And when you're a minority, again, there are things that will happen. And I'm not here saying these things don't happen. But when you're a minority, when you're 14% of the population, you have to look at the path forward. We have done well in athletics. We've done well in entertainment. We have been highly overly represented in politics. Highly overly represented. And it's been one of our biggest failure in the black community. Politics have failed the black community. The educational system has failed the black community. The family is in disarray. Only 29% of blacks are married. To keep wealth, you have to stay married. Those are things I believe in. Those are values that are not white. Wherever I go, whatever, as long as I stick to those values, they will mean something to me. So to be considered a token because you espouse these principles is disingenuous. It is wicked. It is destructive to the American system of governance, our way of life. We have principles that uphold this institution. All men, I will keep saying it, are created equal and is endowed by our unalienable rights of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. But I like to substitute that with property. We're not tokens. I'm not a token. Whether I'm only, a small percentage of the 8% that support the Republican Party values currently. I'm not a token. This is my beliefs. And I will stand up for it. I will fight for it. I can't fix the past, the history that was there. But I'm darn sure know that I'm in a time when those things don't exist, in the sense of Jim Crow doesn't exist, slavery doesn't exist. I don't feel systemic oppression because I don't live my life like that. I know the only way to inspire people is to work hard. Not just spout off rhetoric, not just come out here and blame someone for failure or whatever it is. It doesn't help anybody. Tokenism has no place or in the vocabulary of, or should be tolerated from any politician. This is politics that's just worse. It is just as bad as when you say, again, I go back to what I was saying with blacks who are intelligent or who have made lofty made lofty accomplishment in different endeavors. The moment they say, I am a Republican, they're dismissed from mainstream America. They're dismissed. There's a stigma. I always find it troubling that there's high crimes in the black community, lots of murders. The only thing that really get represent focus is when it's a black and white system or it involves the police. Why is it that if liberals and the media care so much about what goes on in the black community, they're not showing the black and black crime? And be careful and listen to what I'm saying right now. Black and black crime is destructive on the black community. It has taken many innocent lives. Why is it that you only hear when a black man is being shot by the police for whatever reasons, or a white man commits some grave harm to another black person? But there are the thousands and thousands of blacks who are being killed and slaughtered. You do not see that in the New York Times. You might get a little every now and then. You do not see that on CNN constantly. Fox News, wherever. You don't see it constantly. Well, Fox News, I'll say, they try to bring light to that. But they are being told that they have an agenda. Well, for me, at least it's been in the news. There's a reason for that. Why is it that we only continue to see the worst case scenario? And then it is then put under a microscope and we're told that this is the way the country is. This is the way that, just ask yourself, why is that? Why is that not being addressed daily? Why is it that the only shooting that matters is mass shooting? Why is that? Ask yourself those questions. Those lives don't matter. They do matter. We, as a country, will have to ask ourselves some questions. I was born free. I will die free. And I believe in this American system of life, liberty, and individuality. This is Claston Bernard. You can find my book, Outcast, on Amazon.com. Thank you.